here's another really, really, really great like racist story, like very specific.
I love the
It's
great racism. I love the oxymoron.
like
It's
another
perfect.
yeah.
Hello, my name is Acacia Hill.
And I'm Asher Hill.
Welcome to FSDIA's Conversations in Color, where we traverse the topics that are rarely discussed in the skating community and the voices that are rarely heard.
We aim to open up a much needed dialogue, perspective, and hopefully education on subjects that have become somewhat taboo in our sport. Hey everyone, welcome back to FSDIA's Conversations in Color. Today we are talking about Black Boy Joy in figure skating. We are joined by three special guests and Black excellence in skating. Quinton Clemons, Joey Millet, and Alexander Allen.
Woo, woo, woo.
Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Look at all these beautiful chocolate faces. Yes.
Yes.
How are y'all doing in this panorama?
Well, living it up at home.
Literally,
Thanks, Dave. Moving from couch to couch to bed. Good.
pretty much. If I hear lockdown one more time, I'm gonna start getting the shakes.
All right, so let's start by introducing yourselves to us and our audience. Let's start with you, Alex.
What's up, good, beautiful people? My name is Alexander Allen. I reside in Fort Washington, Maryland, over here on the East Coast. I'm a professional skater for Disney on Ice and a live host as well. I'm here at home, good old at home, sheltered, not doing too much, but I'm looking forward to resuming back to tour this upcoming March. So we'll be good to get back on the road, back into the swing of things. In the meantime, just enjoying time with the friends and family and, just having time for myself.
Awesome. And what about you, Joey?
Hey, I'm Joey Millet. I'm located in Minneapolis now. I grew up in Houston. And then I'm a competitive skater. I also coach. I also do industrial sales too as my full-time job. Skating's been my passion since I was 5. And so I look forward to being on the ice every day and celebrating Black Boy Joy on the ice.
Yes. Awesome.
And last but certainly not least, Quinton. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Quinton Clemons. I live in Chicago, Illinois, in the good old Midwest, not Miss West, even though.
Or the lady formerly known as Miss West Kardashian.
Okay, come to the stage, Miss West. Anyway, I am a high school teacher. I teach history, mostly freshmen, and I teach figure skating at all levels. And yeah, I was on tour with Disney on Ice for 5 years, and I'm just trying to make the best of this situation. The panorama is real.
It's
real. We are, like people may be over COVID, but COVID ain't over us. So
It sure ain't. Not especially in the States.
And now she's up changing outfits.
Yeah.
And I bet, Quinton, you teach the real history.
Yeah.
I definitely have a flair for upsetting some people with, the truth hurts.
The truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The truth
Needs to be said.
Okay.
Yeah.
It needs to be heard.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine the kids going back to their mom, is this true?
I do get a lot of emails from parents being like, so my child was at the dinner table and they were arguing with my uncle about this thing. And I'm like, good.
Thank you for educating.
Just call us to send it back to class. We can verify everything you say. It's cool.
I will cite my sources every single time.
I got footnotes. That's it. All right, perfect. I would also like to say that these are all members of FSDIA as well.
Yes.
Various committees and part of our community of diverse skaters. So let's get into it. We're gonna start with you, Quinton, coming right back to you. Let's talk about being a black man in skating, a black boy in skating. So first of all, what do people? We all experience this, but what do people say to you when you tell them that you are a figure skater?
Well, the first thing that happens is people go, like, they think I'm saying something else. Like, I was a professional finger painter. No. I was a figure skater. And you can kind of you can see that inner monologue in their heads where they're like, so wait, he's black. And he said figure skating. I don't understand. So there's definitely that moment where I have to explain that, yes, it is what I did. It's what I do. It's my first love, and it happens all over the board. Like, as much as I'd love to be like, oh yeah, white people always get me confused. Even my family, I remember so many times my family being like, what are you doing skating? Everything on the ice is white, including the ice.
Right? It's true. I have to sometimes prove to people, like, they're like, pull it out. I don't believe you. Like, pull out a video. I'm like, seriously? Like, what?
Video.
I'm like, you want me to do a double axel right here? Like, in Starbucks?
Exactly. And what about you, Alex?
Well, okay, so when I get that question, usually I get the same kind of response. They're like, you do what? You do figure skating? I'm like, yeah, figure skating. Oh, okay. There's a rink around here? I'm like, yeah, it's right down the street. Yeah, I didn't know. It's right down the street. And then they go, do they have coaches and lessons? I'm like, yeah, you can take lessons and coach and all that good stuff. Right down the street, I learned how to skate, and this led me to here. They're like, oh, okay. Good for you, bro. Good for you, brother, man. And then every now and then, though, like when you're in a show, you get out of a show and they see you. Because when I worked on the cruise ship, I would finish the show and everybody would know who you were, and they knew you were in the show and stuff. And I was the only black person in the show, so I stayed out like a sore thumb. And they would come up to me, they're like, "Oh, you're that guy that was in the show." And I'm like, "Yep, that was me." Good for you. I didn't know what that meant. Like, what does that good for you mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, understand.
For you too, bro.
Yeah.
That's a cold sport. You don't run on a field for that one. But you know what? I take it as a compliment because you're doing something that's different, that's challenging. You stand out. You work against the demographic, and you make it your own. And you prove to other people that they can do it too if they put their mind to it. So hey, I take it as a compliment. I really do.
So same question to you, Joey. But how do you handle that? Also, what Alex just said, just being like, good for you. How do you handle that? Like when they say that kind of thing, it's just like,
yes. So for me, the most common thing is that people look at me and be like, okay, like Drew must be some sort of athlete. Like what team do you play for? And I'm like, okay, like there's obviously the assumption that I play basketball or because I'm tall, but then I'll say, okay, I'm actually a figure skater. And just like, I love to watch the reactions on people's faces. They're just like, oh, like, aren't you a little tall for that? And like the questions start like building and it's like, okay, yes, like, and I constantly think of ways to come back with something that's like, a little bit spunky, but like also like, a little bit of a clap back, but like, I will say like, okay, yeah, I'm 6'2", but Evan Lysacek was 6'3". I trained with him when I was in California. And then also lines look way better on tall people. So like my lines on the ice are like super impressive. My jumps are super impressive. It's about how you look at it. So I like to throw that out there. But being a black man in figure skating has just like been a way to be comfortable with being the only one out there, being alienated, being othered. It's finding a way to find peace and comfort with it. And I think it's a tough challenge for a Black man in figure skating, but I think it really builds character.
Yes, it does. And you're a beautiful skater. Like, your jumps are like, whoop, whoop, on point. I'm like, get it.
Watch your skating anymore. It just makes it.
And he's I have to say, because he won't say it about himself, he's an athlete and an artist. Like, you feel what he's feeling when he's skating.
Lots of heart, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, where did you guys all train out of, and what is the skating club you represented? Were there other Black skaters in your club, or were you the only ones? Tell us about that. We'll start first with Joey.
Okay. I grew up in Clear Lake, Texas, which is a suburb in Houston. And I actually started skating with my sister when I was 5, and she was about 6 years old. And we started skating with one of our friends, Morgan, and we were the 3 Black skaters at the rink. And it was really fortunate that I had my sister, and then I had another Black skater, Morgan, and we 3 grew up together. So it's like we had a little bit of a community within this white space in Texas. And so my sister actually stopped skating at 18, and then Morgan stopped skating at 18 too. So from that point on, I was 16 and had 2 more years of high school. But yeah, it was nice to not be the only Black skater growing up in Houston.
Yeah, that's good. That's important, because there's some kids who don't have that. So that's important. So that's great that you had that. What about you?
I do feel fortunate, yes.
Yeah.
Looking back at it.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Quinton?
Yeah, so I was really, really fortunate in that way. I started skating with Black skaters like Reggie Rush, Jason Thomas, Chrissy Lipscomb, one of the best female jumpers the world has ever seen. And then there were coaches who were Black, really amazing coaches. One of the reasons why I ended up on Disney on Ice is because I went to Disney on Ice and I saw Hank Green skate with this huge yellow mohawk, and he was mesmerizing and incredible, and I've never seen a performer like it. And he came off tour, and he skated at my rink, and Larry Holiday was at my rink, and national competitor, international competitor. So I was really fortunate that way. And then when I really wanted to be serious about skating, I moved to Minnesota, and I skated with people like Victor Barasielli, who is another one who is tall. I think he's like 6'5" or something like that. And he was really amazing. And Deneen Richburg, I was really fortunate to skate with. I also skated with Roheme Ward, who I will die on this hill. I think Roheme is the best skater to ever be on the ice, ever. He did jumps, spins, artistry. He wasn't both directions. Like, a lot of people talk about him like, oh, he was so talented. He wasn't just talented, he was skilled. He worked on his technique, and just being on the ice with people like him totally instilled in me that I just want to be the best that I could be, knowing that I wasn't even a 10th as good as him, but he also made it to where it was like everybody was valid. Whatever you were skating for, why, you were skating, was all up to you. So I was really, really lucky to be around really amazing Black skaters coming up and just pushing me, motivating me, inspiring me. The idea of Black excellence on ice was almost everywhere I looked, which was really, really incredible. I feel really fortunate.
All the names you just said, people are gonna have to Google it, because they'll be like, what? There's more. Like, wow, there's so many Black people.
Yeah, Chicago has had a lot, and there were a lot I didn't name, like Lane Walker and Hamida Ahmad. I mean, and we literally used to, all of us, we used to be like this big family who communicated a lot. And when I tell you, incredible skaters, incredible.
Yeah, amazing. And what about you, Alex?
Oh my gosh. Well, what's so funny? Listening to all of these names, it makes me want to go skating tonight. I'm not going to. I was very fortunate as well. I grew up, of course, here in Fort Washington, Maryland, but I trained over at Mount Vernon Alexandria, Virginia. And at that rink, it was very diverse. So you had people from all over the world who trained there. And there was a lot of black skaters at that rink, actually, like young black skaters who just wanted to skate recreationally, just enjoyed the sport. But on a larger scale, we had Derek Dillmore. That was the person that I looked up to who was at our skating rink. We had Derek Dillmore, and I was coached by Holly Eisenhower, who also coached Vanessa James and Melissa James. So every now and then Vanessa James would come over and her sister would come over and they would skate at our rink. And I'm like, wow, look at this girl. Where all these guys come from? This is amazing. Like black people who are good, But sharing the same ice with like a skater like Derek Dillmore. Oh, and also his coach, who was Shirley Hughes, she had a lot of black students. And she was notorious at our rink for having like the best students. So all of her students had all the doubles, all the double combinations, they were competing for nationals, they were training for the Olympics, like that whole genre of skaters were there at our rink. So it was good to kind of get the push and the motivation to want to be better than them, or just anybody, and just yourself, there was that animosity amongst people just wanting to be better than the next person. But it was motivation because you did feel like there was that encouragement, there was that push that pushed you forward. Even if they didn't make it, they still were supporting you to go forward because you were a minority in a huge pond of figure skaters. We go to competitions and we don't think about this so much, but now that you look back on it, you go to competitions and you realize that you're the only one. There's nobody else. Like it used to be myself and Hope Alexander. Hope Alexander, she plays the Princess Tiana on Disney on Ice right now. But it used to be just she and I, or it'd be myself and Vanessa, or it'd be like myself and Aurora. And that's it. Like, we are like not even kidding when we go to competitions and say that we're the only ones.
Yeah.
So when I went to
I know the exact feeling, and we're gonna touch on training traveling internationally, competitions and all that stuff. But before we move on from training environment, and any one of you can jump in here. Can we talk about having that representation, especially at such a young age, not only, and Quinton, when you're saying it, having the representation not only with other black skaters, but having coaches, educators, people who are like growing you up, who we're not a monolith of black struggle, but we all have this connectivity because we all go through very much the same thing to different degrees, or whatever your socioeconomic status is, whatever. We all have this kind of thread that connects us. Can you talk about more like what it really meant to you then, or if you didn't really know about it then, now how much that really shaped your skating, your training, all that stuff, and how you enter the world today in our sport and outside of it?
Yeah, so I mentioned Hank Green, Larry Holiday, Michael Orr. It was so helpful for me to see how representation mattered, right? It wasn't this thing where I had to see excellence in a face that didn't look like mine. I looked at them and I saw what my future could be. And it was amazing because they were all so good. Like they were so good, they were so accomplished, and in very different ways. You talk about us not being a monolith, and that's so important to me because their styles were so different, their training styles were so different. The decisions on where they chose to take their skating, which is also really important to me because I think sometimes we tell, especially skaters of color, or BIPOC skaters, or even gender diverse skaters, that there's only one road to success. I don't have the experience of competition like Alex and Joey, but what I got from my skating career, looking up to these really amazing Black male skaters specifically, was Larry Holiday competed at NHK Trophy that I watched on TV, and that was valid. And Hank Green was not just a principal, but super principal in the show world, where he could write his own ticket because he was so brilliant that every show knew they were lucky to have him. Michael Orr was very much about theater on ice and things like that. So there were so many different avenues that I knew I had access to. And it just motivated me because, you know, my goal wasn't to make it to the Olympics. I never wanted that. I wanted to be the fiercest performer out there. I wanted to get on that ice and people not just be like, oh, there's that Black guy. I wanted them to be like, do you see him dancing on that ice? He's hitting every single beat hard in the pocket. His flavor is so fierce. Not, you know, I'm not going to say that I accomplished that, but I'm not going to say I didn't.
Making sure you're hitting them twos and them fours, because you know what I realized with, like, especially with ice dance, we're always hitting the ones and threes because it's the timing that you realize, like, that's not real rhythm, but like it is real rhythm. It count, but like it is. It's just a different style of dancing, but like, you know what I mean.
And like, did you guys ever in your arenas find that you were facing discrimination or racism? You said a lot about, you know, there's a lot of Black skaters around you, but what about the other side? Racism, discrimination. Can you guys tell us about that? We'll start with you, Alex.
Okay, so fortunately enough for me, I did not find that in our skating rink because we were such a diverse rink. And we were all so young. I guess I didn't really experience that too much. Actually, no, I didn't experience it at all. Now that I think back on it, I will say though, there was this one girl when I was younger was afraid to like touch me. It was kind of weird. I think I thought about this recently, and it just popped up as an ad hoc moment, but it popped up, and I wondered if it was because I was Black. I don't know. She just seemed very like hometown girl. Just, you know, maybe she had a different upbringing. Maybe she had an experience in her life. I don't know. Maybe something her parents told her. But whenever I would go over to touch her, whether it was grab her hand or like grab her wrist or give her a high five or like, you know, whatever young kids do when they're at the skating rink, just to kind of show camaraderie, she would like freak out and be like, oh my God, don't touch me. You know, and it's kind of weird. It's so weird. I don't want to say it was because I was Black, but now that I look back on it, I often wonder if that was the reason.
Did she touch anybody else?
Yeah. I mean, you know, we nudge up against people. You know, we give high fives and we give fist pumps, but it just seemed like it was kind of like a don't touch me, you're too close kind of thing. And it only happened with me. And I guess because in our skating rink, like we didn't have, there was kind of like a competitive feeling at our skating rink. We had those skaters and then there was us kind of thing. You know, not us being Black, but everyone who wasn't on the national level, regional high competitive level, you know. So it was kind of that kind of divide. But I noticed that with her, to me, and it kind of made me feel a little uneasy. But as I got older, like I said, I didn't realize it until I got older. But looking back on it, I'm like, I wonder if whether or not it was because of the color of my skin.
Joey,
you spoke of having your sister and another skater with you up until 18.
Yeah, you know, I did experience racism growing up at the rink, and I liked to just put it aside and maybe like try to hide it from myself or try to forget it or not remember it because it just made me feel not valuable and not great. So for me, I like growing up, I was always like kind of young skater that was very talented that you know, started to get my jumps very quickly, and then soon I became like top dog at the rink. And it being a person of color and then being, you know, the probably one of the best skaters at the rink growing up skating, it kind of puts you in a different position. I think just based on how I grew up. But when my sister and I would go to competition, we did ice dance together actually, and she competed in singles, and she competed. She was very precise, like always hit her jumps, never fell, and like had like smaller jumps, but very clean, like very precise jumps and like elements. So in Texas, she always got middle of the pack, no matter what, no matter if she did a clean program, like she would never be up at the top, even if she deserved it. And there would be other skaters who, you know, were you know, white skaters that, you know, either had a technique of like a wrap, or like, you know, would fall on elements and still place at the top. So my mom made the decision for us to switch regions whenever I was about 11 years old and my sister was about 12. So we switched regions out of Texas, out of the Southwestern region, because of the racism we experienced in the judging system. And we moved to the Pacific Northwest, and I skated for the Spokane Figure Skating Club for all of the rest of my skating career, all the way until I graduated college. So then I started to compete on the West Coast. I started, and I got a lot more traction on the West Coast. I actually qualified for nationals my freshman year of college, and I felt like it gave us more opportunity to compete out of the Pacific Northwest, and the club was amazing out in Spokane as well. So we were able to find a way to maneuver around the racism a little bit, but it was still there every time we were at the rink.
That's so crazy that you had to move to another part of town to like get away from that so you could just rise up in the rankings. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yes, it like, now that I think back on it, I'm so glad my mom made that move. We had to travel a lot to go to competitions, but it made us all happier, you know, because we found like the success that we deserved.
Yeah.
As far as like racism, deliberate racism about being a Black figure skater, I only experienced that to my face in school. It was usually, it was in middle school. In about 7th grade, I you know, realized that people that were my friends in elementary school were no longer my friends, and you know, getting called names, whether you name it. The names just continued all the way through middle school, and you know, when we would get in a fight, it always came down to like, well, like what are you doing? You're a Black figure skater, like in Texas. What are you doing? Like that's kind of what it boiled down to. And it's like, okay, well, that's who I am. And I ended up leaving public school and going to a private school to be in a little bit more of a sheltered environment. And it really was a good decision for me. I mean, I was getting to the point where I could have potentially, you know, like lashed out at that point, you know, being teased in school. And I think it was a good move for me to move to, you know, private school and be able to focus on my training more.
You know, I think everyone experiences bullying. That's through all races, whatever, everybody. But when it's predicated on something you can't control, like your race, your color, it makes you feel, like you said, almost like worthless, and you like want to lash out. But then there's this other layer of like, if I do, here comes the angry Black kid, the aggressive one. Will I be believed that I was called these names? Will I be
right?
That extra layer.
Yeah, I actually experienced that a lot. Like, I experienced a lot of racism growing up. And of course, you know, it's complex, right? Like, there were the microaggressions from, you know, people talking about like what looked good on my skin, or what should look good on my skin, or the way I talked, or, you know, all of these things, which was really like kind of gaslighty, because I was raised, my family is team everybody Black. So like, if you were Black, we're rooting for you. Love the skin you're in, love our music, love our culture, love, you know, like I'm a dark-skinned Black man, but I'm actually like lighter than my brother. And we were always told that our skin is beautiful. And I still believe that to this very day. Yeah. But it would be weird because you would go to the rink and, you know, people would have these comments about, you know, my hair, or like, you know, of course, people love these lips now, but back then, people had all kinds of things to say about, you know, like having big lips. So it, you know, there were the microaggressions, but then there were also the macroaggressions, being called a monkey. And, you know, I remember I had this really bad interaction with a skater's mom, because she called me a monkey, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a really, really aggressive reaction. And no one at the rink understood why that was so offensive. So, you know, everybody just looks at you, become the aggressive Black man. Or here's another really, really, really great like racist story, like very specific.
I love the
It's great.
great racism. I love the oxymoron.
Yeah. like
It's
another
perfect. It's
yeah. Another Black skater went through this with me. Her mother is white and her dad is Black, and she was selling flowers for the ice show. And I'm at the ice show. I wasn't in that ice show. I think I was performing in Niles Iceland's ice show or whatever. But I came to see this ice show, and I get called into the office, and they're like, "So Quinton, we just wanted to let you know that somebody said that you stole money from the register for selling flowers." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, someone said that they saw you and da 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 da. They're accusing you of stealing $20." And I'm like, first of all, if I'm gonna steal something, $20, like who steals $20?
Go big or go home. Why just 20?
Right. So there's me, and then there's this parent of this other Black skater, and they did not realize that the accusation of being a thief when you're Black holds more weight. And they didn't understand why I was so incensed at the idea that the only people that you are accusing of stealing this $20 are two Black skaters. And they didn't understand, even if it was like, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt, even if it was like a fair thing, they didn't understand why I was so upset, why it meant more to me that they were accusing me of stealing. So there's a wide range of, the kind of things that can happen, from the seemingly benign to the things that, like, I had nightmares about that. I wouldn't walk back into that rink for like 3 years because it just hurt so much that, I was accused. And we're talking about somebody who, I'm everyone who knows me knows I'm like the extreme rule follower, right? Like never late, never had alcohol, cigarettes, coffee, any of these things. And you're sitting here, not to say that any of those things are bad, and I'm not judging that, but like to be accused of being a thief, it just it hit me in a very special way. So I experienced a lot of things like that, and I will say that it really colored a lot of my relationships in the Chicagoland area. Because when you're a Black skater, you have a moment where you're thinking to yourself, is this about racism? Or am I, like you always have this you're always second guessing if it's about racism, because you experience it so much that it's hard to disseminate what is and what isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely, I have a student who at a past club that I worked at was assaulted by another skater. And instead of them doing, like the board of directors doing their job and actually investigating what happened, they immediately dragged the Black boy into the office, didn't bring me in, just the Black boy, and accused him of being the aggressor when he was actually on the receiving end. And when they finally brought us in, the mom, myself, and the kid, they apologized and said, we found out the actual story. And I was fuming because I'm just like, why did you automatically assume that the Black child was the aggressor? Why didn't you do the full investigation first before assuming? I'm like, you don't understand how that Black child is feeling now. Like, you're just blaming this kid and you don't know like what that does to us, because we're always labeled as the aggressor. We're always labeled as these people who fight, and so it was just I was fuming. I was so mad. And yeah, it's just crazy the things that Black kids have to go through in the sport and other sports.
Yeah, I would suggest everyone watch a documentary. I actually show it in my classroom called 13th, and it's about it's about the 13th Amendment and the loophole in the 13th Amendment that no one shall be enslaved unless they are deemed a criminal. And I think it speaks a lot to our country's desire to always label Black men specifically as criminals because it justifies enslavement. So it's so ingrained in not just our countries, because I'm from the States, but like Canada, all over the world, that Black men are villains. Black men need to be punished. It really assists in the prison industrial complex. And I know we're talking about skating, but skating can be a microcosm for our larger context that we call the world. So, you know, there's a part in the documentary where you see a Black man and he's walking with his hat and he's wearing his Sunday best, which, you know, you shouldn't be respectable. You shouldn't have to engage in respectability politics to be respectable. That's a different conversation. And he's like walking and he's just trying to like mind his own business. And you have all of these white men like attacking him. And every Black person, I know every Black person can look and they can identify with that feeling of, if that Black man were to defend himself, he would instantly be labeled as the aggressor. And then he would be taken to jail with no kind of defense. Every Black person knows that like maddening feeling where it's like, I want to defend myself, but I know how this is gonna go. And the skating, I had a lot of experiences like that in skating where,
I just had it. I literally went through it as a coach, and you're like, what? I literally just went through it. And when you're defending yourself and like defending your athletes, and you're just like, you're the angry Black woman. I'm like, but I'm not angry. I'm just trying to show you how that makes me feel. They don't get it. And you're just like, wow.
And then now I am angry because I'm being gaslit into thinking that like, what is actually happening to me? It's like being slapped in the face and like, why did you do that? Like, do what?
Yeah.
You know?
You know what though? That just goes to show that, you know, that saying of what doesn't break you down, it makes you stronger. Because we had the same thing at our skating rink. We had a skating rink at my local skating rink where we had a skating club, and it used to be, you know, pretty predominantly white, but then with me being in a Black area, a lot of Black kids came in, and we had one of the parents who was like one of the original people of the skating club made the statement of, I don't want to be a part of a Black club. I just don't want to. And you could feel the weight. Like as a young child, I thought about that and I was like, oh my gosh, is it me? Is it something I did? Is it something I said? Like what like, I don't get it. What's the big deal? But looking back on it, I remember my mom, she was the president of the skating club at the time. And we had a competition that we hosted every single year. And it was really, really big. Like it was like the competition to go to for the ISI, you know, kind of events. And we knew that with all of that weight and all of that animosity coming our way, that we had to be the best. We had to be better. We had to do it up bigger. It had to be like so good that they don't say anything bad about it. They can just sit back and be like, wow, I can't believe they pulled the damn thing off. Like, how the hell did they do that? But what people don't realize, especially when it comes to Black people, this is how I take it, is that when you try to say something to tear me down, that is fuel for me.
Yeah.
Like it is, it's fuel for me. And I take that when I go into a show, when they say, oh, you're the only Black person in the show, does that make you feel uncomfortable? I'm like, no, I may be the only Black person in the show, but I'm about to give you something to see. You paid your ticket and you're coming to see me. That's it. That's how I am. It gives us fuel. It builds us up and makes us stronger. It doesn't cause us to hang our head down low. We're already in the sport where we are the minority, so we know what's coming. So we're built for this. But you know, sometimes we have to take we have to take and roll with the punches. You know, that's just kind of how we do it. We're built for it.
And I can vouch for Alex. If you haven't seen this man skate, you missing out. This man can perform.
If you really love this episode, please tune in next week for part 2.
FSDIA's Conversations in Color is recorded and edited in Toronto and Pickering, Ontario, Canada, on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga of Scugog, Wendat, Huron-Wendat, and the Mississauga of the Credit.
Thank you so much for tuning into FSDIA's Conversations in Color. Please subscribe to our channel. Find us on the gram at Figure Skating DIA, on Facebook at the Figure Skating Diversity and Inclusion Alliance, and our website at fsdia.org. And remember to color your ice.